You know they got that same name, but different point of views. Whichever one you choose, you can't lose. They got that same name, different point of views. Whichever one you choose, you can't lose. Keisha and Keisha,
knowledge, wisdom, and discernment. Keisha, you don't got it, you can get some if you heard them.
Keisha and Keisha, man.
Knowledge, wisdom, and discernment. Keisha, you don't got it, you can get some if you heard them. We gon' laugh, have a good time. Just sit back and elevate your mind.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 17.
Welcome, 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 welcome.
We have a special guest today because guess what? We've had so many things going on with police and the community, and it's in the news. We decided to bring in our resident cop.
What? See, that's when you know some people, right, Keisha?
And hey,
I'm gonna tell you, don't underestimate Keisha and Keisha, because we know some folks.
we kicking knowledge everywhere. And not only are we kicking knowledge, this family.
That's spam right here. This right here is spam, okay?
If you don't recognize him, if you go to our Instagram page, you would see that he was the one teaching us how to handle a gun and how to shoot.
Baby, it got me gun fever. Do you hear me?
And got me want to run the hell away.
So let's even start off with that. So give us a little bit about who you are and tell us why you thought that was important that we did that day.
Well, let's say his name, Carlos the Cop. Introduce
Carlos
yourself.
Okay, Carlos the Cop.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Carlos the Cop. I just thought that, again, I'm Carlos the Cop. I just thought it was very important to teach young ladies the importance of gun safety, especially you all who are considered family, living in a society whereas, there's a lot of crime. And women are very vulnerable. So we want to make sure that you understand how to protect yourself if you ever encounter someone who's dangerous or you feel like you're in a position whereas you feel like it's your life or either to live or to die. So we want you to understand how to use a firearm, and we want you to understand that firearms are dangerous, but they can be fun if you respect them.
And I had fun. I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed it. He was loading them up for me, then he taught me how to load them myself, and I did that. And I was like, give me one of them ladies back in the Western movies.
Annie Oakley?
Annie Oakley, baby. I was Annie Oakley.
Yeah.
And I did not have fun. And it had nothing to do with Carlos teaching us. It was the environment, the other people who were there with assault weapons and the bang, bang, bang. And I was standing back watching them. I don't trust nobody with a gun that I don't know on the other side of me.
Right.
And so I was standing back being very cautious, but I grew up with guns.
All right, well, we're going to get into our topic. Carlos reached out to us, and he not only wanted to discuss this topic, but we were so glad when he reached out to us because we wanted to talk about it as well. And with all of the police brutality, just everything that's been in the news lately, especially with African American males, we thought it just was appropriate to bring the resident cop on. And some of the things he may share is definitely coming from a cop's perspective, and we want you guys to take that for what that is. And if you want to leave comments, you know our social media tags, you can leave it on there, and we'll recap it next week. But we really wanted to get his opinion because he'll tell you a little bit about his experience and where he actually became a cop and how long he's been, dealing in that industry. But we just thought it was very important, Keisha, right, to just be able to ask some questions and for him to share some information and more importantly to talk about safety.
Well, and I think it's important that we highlight a good cop. We've been hearing so much about bad cops. It's time for us to let you know there are good cops out there. So we're going to hit Carlos with some of the hard stuff after he introduces himself and let him explain some stuff because we are civilians, but coming from a cop's perspective, they're putting their life on the line all the time. So let's hear what he has to say.
All right, so Carlos, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the force, how long you've been in, that type of deal.
Okay. I became a police officer at the age of 20. Actually, graduated the police academy at the age of 21 in Alabama. I always wanted to be a police officer. I wanted to be a police officer because back in the second grade, when you bring all the professionals out to the school, they ask you, you have the firefighters, you have the police officers, you have the doctors, the lawyers, you have the just everybody in their professions that would come out to the school, and one of the questions that were raised is, what do you want to do in life? And then I always raised my hand every time the professionals came out and said, I want to be a police officer. So this was not just a dream, but this was something I was very passionate about because I wanted to be that person that can be the reliable one in the community to be called on if you needed some help. So I have 18 years of law enforcement experience, and I have policed in rural areas as well as large cities.
Okay. Now, where did you get your start?
I got my start in Selma, Alabama.
Now, did y'all hear that? That dude say Selma, Alabama. Now, I don't know if you've ever been across the Evans Pettus Bridge, baby, but I'm gonna tell you one thing. Selma, Alabama, I mean, that's a place to get your training.
Yes.
Well, and I'm from Selma too.
Okay.
What my mama them are from
Girl,
Selma.
that Keisha will claim anything, baby.
The Harrisons, we're from
Oh,
Selma.
okay.
What's up?
Absolutely.
And the Thrashers.
But policing in that era taught me a lot, and so therefore, when I moved to this area, I was already equipped with some of the knowledge and experience that I need to be a successful police officer here in this community.
Okay, well, let's dig into some of these questions. You willing to answer a few questions for us? We tried to make them things that we knew people would probably want to know about or get some experience about. So let's dig into that first part. Like, what we want to get kind of in the mind of a police officer. So you already told us what led you to be a cop, but what qualities do you think are important?
One of the characteristics that a police officer has to possess is he has to be a person that is trusting, one that can trust himself with different situations. If you're encountered with a person who's committing a crime, but you want to be a person that someone can rely on. You want to be that person in the community that someone can look up to. You want to be a positive role model of. You want to, have that persona of being a positive image in the community. You want to be a person that can understand where a person is coming from. If a person have had a bad day, or a person have lost their job, or a person have come home and found their home burned to the ground, or an intruder have come in and stolen everything that they have. You want to be that person that has an understanding heart and mind, that when you are confronted with any issue, you don't have to be tough to be a police officer.
I'm
That's going to come.
Okay.
I mean, that's part of the job. It's going to teach you to be tough. It's going to teach you to take on different personalities, multiple personalities. That's something you're going to be taught on the job. But I think, again, what a person needs, that qualification, is just being that person that to protect the laws, to protect the people in the community, to protect the laws of the Constitution of the United States, and honor those laws, that you're going to be able to do those, and you should hold yourself to a higher standard from taking that oath, that every person that you encounter deserve you to treat them with the utmost respect.
Say that again.
Well, I had another thing. Communication seems to be the problem in most of the tapes that we're watching, even in what happened here in Fort Walton Beach, that we don't know how to communicate with each other. Like the disconnect there, like officers going against civilians, against the people who call. It's like they don't. What happened if you watch the YouTube video with the Waffle House incident, the officer never got to the root of the problem. And the people who called, by the time he got to them and realized that didn't make any sense, he had wasted so much time and there was so much confusion. So do you think that being able to communicate with people, just being able to listen to what they're saying and understand what they're saying, because that's part of communication?
But Keisha, outside of just wasting time, he treated those people like they were already guilty of something.
Well, that's the community, that's going with that. It's one of the things, because when we watched the YouTube video, he walked up and was like, come here. And it was like, you don't talk to a person like that.
And you can tell he had known the guy.
Well, first off, when any officer arrives on the scene, they take the call inside of the car. And whether it comes on the computer or it comes directly from dispatch, once that officer gets that call and he's on his way, while he's en route, he's preparing himself mentally. Physically, you should be already in shape. You should already have the adequate amount of sleep that you need to perform your duties. But he's making an assessment once he gets out of that car, and when he arrives on the scene, he's assessing the scene, making that assessment of what's about to happen. If you have a person on the scene who's being very belligerent or disorderly, you don't need to approach that person in the same manner. You need to be able to approach that person in a calm manner where that person can see you trying to help them. We must understand as law enforcement officers that we are there to help people. The answer is not always taking a person to jail. Now, understand that sometimes you do have to detain people until you are able to sort out what's wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Detaining a person is not putting a person in an uncomfortable position or making them feel guilty. Detaining a person for your safety and theirs, it may sometimes sometimes result in you handcuffing that person, or if not handcuffing that person, or send that person to the side and say, hey, calm down, sit on the end of my car until I find out what's going on. I think that when a person arrives on a scene, that they should assess the problem first, other than directly taking their minds from 0 to 100, and and become very combative and making the situation worse.
Assuming, I think most of what happened that we noticed in the video, he assumed right off the bat. But the other thing that you just said is detaining someone for safety. My question is, if no one has a weapon, and that's what we're talking about, the Waffle House. No one had a weapon. Why did they need to handcuff and put them in the car?
Well, I can't really comment on that officer and what he was thinking. But what I will say is what I said before: when an officer arrives on the scene and he sees what's going on around him as he's driving up or as he's walking up, he's making an assessment of how he's going to rectify the problem or address the problem or de-escalate the situation. However, when he's there, you can separate people. Like, let's take, for instance, for an example, a domestic violence call. And if you're on a domestic violence call, we do know that you got to separate all parties involved because, there are parties that even though that if you sit there and let them continue to go back and forth at each other, then you'll never, ever be able to get to the root of the problem, as you say. And so, therefore, you want to make sure that you are able to separate those persons. So sometimes if you see a person who's, again, being disorderly or throwing their hands around, hitting things, kicking objects over, yes, that's a person that you want to detain by handcuffs. Okay. Sometimes you don't have to handcuff them. You can ask this person, hey, sit in the back of my patrol car. They can't get out. Just sit in the back of my patrol car, crack your window so they can get air, turn the air conditioner on, and until I come back, let me find out what's going on. Okay? There are many ways that you can look at a situation to de-escalate this situation before it becomes bad.
And we were at the town hall meeting, and we all agreed that he didn't de-escalate it. He made it worse. He just made it worse.
And he was doing stuff like on his body cam, like he took all the money out the man's pockets, emptied his pockets and everything. It was like, look at all this money, and look at
Why did he just pay the extra?
And it was like,
and what's even crazier is you see after 15 minutes of this, or 10 minutes or whatever, that he finally gets the employee and asks him the question, and then he said they
didn't eat no food.
They didn't get no food. They didn't leave with no food. I mean, and so at that point it made him look real crazy.
Because he assumed they had stolen something.
Right.
He came up thinking they had
he had a history with the guy.
Yeah, but he said, I thought they ate the food. You didn't even ask.
No.
But let me go.
They were getting it to go.
8 minutes into this video, I had to stop. I had to stop because the girlfriend was screaming so bad that it was disturbing. And it was disturbing because she realized that no one was listening to her. And I, being female, and we're both got voices, and you have a wife who is our dear friend, to see someone realize that nobody's listening to her. And then they start handcuffing her, and she's screaming, what did I do? I didn't do anything wrong. I had to stop and walk away.
Right. See, let me say this.
Okay.
That brings about one comment that you made a moment ago about communication. That is one of, and I think it answered your question too, Keisha, about what are some of the morals of being a law enforcement officer. And one of the key aspects of being a police officer is having strong communicative skills. If you hire a person that had problems listening in grammar school, and then they had problems listening in junior high school, then they have problems listening in high school.
You gotta speak up on that one.
And so how are you gonna put this person out on the street to listen to a person who has a problem?
Come on now.
So again, I raised this question to the both of you. Are you looking at a uniform for what it stands for? Are you looking at the person inside of the uniform?
I'm looking at the uniform for what it stands for. And mainly because they're there to serve and protect. Just because someone called the police, that means that we're trying to figure this out and make sure that everybody walk away safely. Well, it doesn't mean that.
Right.
I'm gonna tell you what I don't like: sidewalk justice. And I felt like that cop came through the door with sidewalk justice, And it's like, no, you need to figure out whether you're not the judge and jury. What you're there to determine is, did someone break the law?
Well, Keisha, just because a person is wearing a uniform, it goes back to what I said, are you looking at the uniform or the person in the uniform? Just because a person is wearing a uniform does not mean that they respect the uniform. People
Now you
become
say it.
police officers for different reasons in life, and
What are some of those reasons, though, Carlos?
well, some reason, because I know police officers that became police officers because they were bullied in school. And they want that authoritative, atmosphere where they're in charge. There are law enforcement officers that become law enforcement officers after they come out of the military. And this is something that is closer to military life.
Yes.
But they got to understand that this is domestic.
And civilian.
And in civilian law
Dealing with
enforcement, this is totally different. But I understand that there are wars on the streets. We have guns, we have gang violence. I understand that. I get that picture. But at the end of the day, we are still public servants. And I think that what people are missing here, the law enforcement officers are not warriors. We are public servants.
Yeah. So then I'm gonna ask you the question: is the pay worth it?
Honestly, the pay isn't worth it. You cannot pay a law enforcement officer enough for what he or she does on the streets, to put their lives on the line each and every day. Once you strap on that badge, once that badge is on your chest, over your heart, then, and you have taken that oath, you don't know if you're going to walk back through those doors. I've had law enforcement friends throughout my life that I buried and have children to this day. I have law enforcement friends that I've come out of the academy with that are deceased. To this, I mean, it's just that you never know. And so, do you say it's the pay? No, it's not the pay. So it brings me to this point, as I shared with you before, that law enforcement officers are not made. Law enforcement officers are born to do this job. And just as well as Jesus was born into the world to die for man's sin, police officers are born into this world to be servants to mankind. And that's what we have to do. We have to be servants, in the educational field and stuff in which you're involved in.
Nurses. And I mean, it's so many people. Everybody think you're doing it for the money.
Right.
So, but
It's not about the money.
In our government, and I'm swinging it another way, but I got to because of the pay. When are we going to be advocates for the people who are serving our communities for them to get an equal pay? Because we're paying people now for mess. And it's like our legislative branch. They get paid so much for 2 days of work out of the year or whatever. And it's like we've got people out here putting their lives on the line. And I know that that's the oath you took. But you should be able to afford to feed your family.
Now wait a minute though, because I remember we had this discussion. You and Carlos was talking about the guy from Parkland who didn't go into the building, and how he didn't put his life in danger. He was about to retire, and he had this. He was making over $90,000 and was about to get his pension. And so I think sometimes it also depends on the area that you're policing.
Well, and it not just what he's making, because not just the area. You have to think of the cost of living, because some places $90,000. No, but I know, but I'm saying the cost of living is what I'm saying.
That's absolutely right.
Even though you make it $90,000, you probably still at that. You still middle. You know, you're not living like $90,000 here would be wonderful. $90,000 down south, not so much. And it's good. Even $90,000 in Chicago is good, but you spend so much on other things. I'm saying, because here it's easier to live. But putting that aside, I get that he was making $90,000, but he was there for so long with certain steps. When you start out in these jobs, it's the bottom.
Absolutely.
And the reason I know is because
I definitely know. I'm a teacher.
No, I'm saying I did police payroll as a city manager, and these guys were making by the hour stuff that fast food people are making, and they're putting their lives on the line.
Absolutely.
And then you got to make it to live through to get to the 90,000. And this guy
let me say this. You guys are touching on a lot of things that are very important when it comes to pay, and not to get involved in all of that. But what I want to say is, not to get involved with all the pay, but what I want to say is that there are many people out there that are lobbying for law enforcement and officers and teachers that get higher pay. But there are certain persons that are not listening. And I don't think not only are they not listening, they're not seeing the danger in which, teachers and law enforcement officers and paramedics and nurses and everyone else that are first responders and educators are encountering on a day-to-day basis. It's easier to say that they get equipment, we give them uniforms, we give them this, we give them that. But at the end of the day, you got to understand that they have families that they need to educate their children. They need to be able to be providers for their family. You know, they need to be breadwinners of the family. But I want to go back to something that you were saying about the incident, Lakeisha, with the Waffle House. I mean, I want you to understand that, you know, when this young lady is screaming and hollering, I just want to go back to this communication thing, that it does not matter how loud a person holler at you or shout at you. You're supposed to be a trained professional at all time.
Right.
So that brings me to this point. What happens to the professionalism? Where is the professionalism within law enforcement? I mean, this is what you're seeing. Yes, it is very nerve-wracking. I've had people to holler at me. I've had people to shout at me. I've been around while gunfire is going around. People's breaking bottles outside of clubs. I've been inside of clubs while people are fighting. I've been fights inside of restrooms where we're fighting a person for he won't flush the cocaine down the toilet commode. I get it. There's a lot. But at the end of the day, guess what? When I go to the next call, and here's a call where a lady's son didn't come home because he stayed out, he just thought that he's the bigger guy and I don't want to come home, I have to de-escalate.
Yes.
I have to come down, sit down on this lady's sofa, and if she wanted to drink a glass of lemonade and iced tea, I have to drink some lemonade and iced tea and eat some tea cookies with her. And just knowing about 30 minutes ago, I was fighting for my life.
Yeah.
We have to understand communication in law enforcement is very, very critical.
Okay, so then it's going to take me to my next point then of the training. You know, like really, when you're in the academy, yes, they're teaching you how to use your gun, they're teaching you if you're in different situations, but do they really train on communicating with people? And then do they do it, you know, are they sensitive to people's race or their economic status, how much money they make? Like, do they give you that training to deal with those communities and those individuals?
I want to add on to what Keisha just said, and it's the same question, but I want to add on to our president during the campaign who was talking about frisk and what is the
Stop and frisk.
Stop and frisk that did not work, which was directly racial profiling. Do you guys address that?
Let me I think it's everything in a nutshell when it comes to training and what you're talking about. They're there to train your mind. They want to train you. First off, they're going to tear your body down to make sure that you're in the best physical shape that you need to be in to serve the community. Secondly, they're going to come in, they're going to tear your mind down because they want you to think as a police officer. They want you to think, you know, how to investigate. They want you to think on how to solve issues and how to solve problems and how to de-escalate circumstances and situations. So,
That's why I want to interrupt you a little bit. So when you think about race and economics, and me and you have been here. I mean,
Yeah.
you grew up in Selma. I grew up in the city of Chicago. And sometimes when I'm in the school setting, I have to deal with a child who grew up, say, in the country on Lovejoy the Left, and they get real riled up about something. I know it's just them getting riled up. They'll take a few seconds for me to come, talk to them, calm them down. But I have seen where there is a resource officers that will take them down or, you know, have them up against the wall or doing whatever when it really is just, you know what I'm saying, because I know how to deal with certain people. So that's what I'm saying. When you say they break you down mentally and bring you back up, do they really delve in? Because that's the same thing that happened when you were talking about the Waffle House thing. Let's talk about the real issue, race.
I think that something is very missing in the training, and is what you're saying. I mean, officers, they go out every day just knowing that they're going to encounter something. They don't know if it's going to be around the corner. They don't even know if it's going to be outside of their own home door. But they do know whether they're working an 8-hour or a 12-hour shift, that they're going to encounter some form of danger. That's what the academy trains your mind for, to make sure that you're able to withstand that type of punishment, because it's punishment. You know, the military soldiers that go overseas and they fight wars and they come back and you have large cases of PTSD. There are many police officers that are served in the military that has PTSD undiagnosed.
So can I make this connection then? Because I hear you and I know that they're trying to make sure you stay safe. But I talked about this with you earlier. For African Americans, they already see us as a danger. and they always see us as guilty. Because that's the way America has established our culture in most situations. Because even when you hear people talk about it on the news, the first thing they want to do is bring up somebody's past history to make it seem like they're bad or they're guilty or that they're dangerous. So when you're in the academy, and like you said, they're teaching you how to de-escalate situations and deal with all these dangers. And then in my mind, because I was raised in an environment that didn't really respect all the cultures, and when you see a black man, you think he's already dangerous and guilty. Can you now see why this stuff is happening? And how this training may need to be, something has to give. And I think, and I'm not even saying that every cop that goes out here and something happens with an African American male that was their intent, even though some of them, it's just one of those things where because they felt endangered or because they felt like the person was already guilty of something, they went in with that, and then plus the training of, hey, if it's a threat, you take it down. Plus, just all of that kind of everything. And I just think when you think about all that together, just as an African-American cop, you have an advantage because, like you said, you're a great cop. We've heard great stories. You've taught us a lot of things on how to stay safe. So when you go in, all that stuff come to you because you have those experiences. So you take some kid out of college who don't have those experiences, get trained on all the stuff that you're saying, and then the way he was raised was that, African-American males are dangerous and guilty. How are we going to, we need to deal with that.
Well, I'm going to say this. Exactly what you said, your last comment, your last statement, is actually a fact. It's a factor because that's what you actually have now. You have young officers, and I was a young officer. And when I went into the academy, before I went into the academy, I was able to be around other law enforcement officers and do ride-alongs and learn the culture of policing and what they do and what to do and what not to do, and some things I saw them do that I would not do. And so when I entered into the law enforcement academy, I had an overview of how, I wanted to treat people when I got out of the academy. Not looking at whether you're white or black, Jew or Gentile, it didn't matter to me. I just wanted to be a public servant. Now, when you get a kid who has never fired a firearm, probably never been in a physical altercation, have never probably experienced anything. I always say the best preacher is the person that has been through everything. Because you can't preach about something that you've never been through.
You can't testify and have a testimony.
So to me, when you got law enforcement agencies who actually, have you ever smoked marijuana before? And you tell them, yes, you have smoked marijuana. Then they say, oh, you're disqualified because you smoked marijuana. But then you ride down the road, here's one of their officers smoking cigarettes, cigars, and you see them out at the club somewhere, and they're drinking and doing everything too. You're like, well, you disqualified me because I told the truth about smoking marijuana. So when you have no life experiences, and then you want to come out here and be a law enforcement officer, then that's what you get. You get a scared police officer, whether it's male or female,
Trigger
that when
happy.
they get into when it's combat training, and once they get into a altercation, they result to their training. And when they result to the training, now your training is to de-escalate a situation, but there are levels of de-escalation.
Yes.
What about verbal de-escalation? Before you get to soft touch, before it get to non-lethal, before it get to lethal. You understand?
Taser. What happened to the
That's
taser?
non-lethal, but
but
you don't have to pull a taser. You can use what we call verbal judo. What happened to verbal judo?
Yeah.
Now, many people may listen to this podcast and say, man, really? I mean, we're not using verbal judo. Well, you're not using verbal judo, but that's why we got so many bodies that have been slain out there, because nobody want to continue to communicate with these people to let them know, hey, I'm here for you.
Right.
So I want to add to that, Carlos, because we were talking about when you were saying about the training. A lot of these police officers are almost like social workers. Like you said, I got to sit down and listen to them. It's almost like another skill, which is like assessing the situation. So on Facebook a while back, it was a young black girl in high school that was just, I think she was having a moment, and a resource officer just tackled her, and I mean, it was all over.
You were just talking about that.
Yeah, and what happened was that she had lost her mom. And
Right.
when you got down to it, and this guy never even thought to say what's going on with you. And being like Keisha as a teacher, you have kids that don't have lights, that don't have water, they hungry, and so they're acting out in a certain way, and they have a certain behavior. So the same with other civilians. You got people who are called the police because they want a friend, because I work in municipality, they'll call up to the city, they just want to talk. And I mean, you have all these things going on, and so you, as a professional, you have to be able to deal with it. And not everybody is bad.
Well, number one, we're in the school. I once was a school resource officer, prevention sergeant, before I moved here.
That's a lot
And
to say.
yeah, it is. And that was the job title. But however, I started the school resource officer unit there in Selma, and so when you are the officer in the school, you should be the officer that the kids can look up to, the officer that the kids that know that officer is going to help me if I need some help, or if something is going wrong with my mom and dad at home, I can come home to school and talk to this officer. If something's going wrong in my community, I can go to school and talk to this officer. Now, kids are going to be kids. They're going to have their fights. They're going to blow off the handle. They're going to try things, because let's face it. We all have been kids. Yes. We all have been teenagers. So none of us are perfect.
Can I stop you
Right.
real quick on that? That's what I'm saying, Los. I'm saying you've been black.
Right.
Get it? So when you looking at a white cop who graduated from college, decided that he wanted to be a police officer, never had a fight, let alone having to deal with too many people that were not of his color, and you take him and give him a badge and a gun and stick him in an area where the only things he's seen is the negative things that either the media or somebody wants to tell him about people of color. I mean,
Never been
That's what I'm
hungry.
saying about
never
the
had,
racial-
never
I can
been
say
poor.
this. I
Yeah.
can say this. You know, and I can only speak from experience. I mean, I've had partners in law enforcement,
okay.
and I just say and I just use Selma as a, you know, but I've had them officers, and I had a partner that graduated from Auburn University. I mean, he's a very smart cop. He had a bachelor's degree, went back, his wife was a school teacher, went back and got his master's degree. I mean, he was still a cop. He was a great officer. Okay. One thing he was fascinated by was martial arts. And every time that it came, we got involved in some form of a physical altercation where we had to take a person to the ground that was being combative, I will always have to remind him that's enough. I can't tell you how many times as a law enforcement officer, as an African-American law enforcement officer, that I have to tell other African-American officers as well, and Caucasian officers, that that's enough.
Yes.
But you got to understand, again, that's their mindset, because they think that this person is being aggressive to them, but they need to understand you have the upper hand anyway, because you're the law.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, no matter how hard you fight, you're gonna go to jail. That's why when a person commit a crime, like the guy that hit the kid over there in Pensacola in the Camaro, the white Camaro, and they've been looking for this guy. I think they found the guy in Philadelphia or whatever. U.S. Marshals went. You may commit the crime, but somebody's gonna be looking for you. You're going to jail. So it doesn't matter how combative a person becomes. You have to remain professional at all times, no matter if they're white or black. You have to be professional at all times. So
I think you know that, Los. I'm saying, and maybe you're agreeing with me, that
Yes.
there's no training for that. That's been the school of the bricks have taught you that. You
Right.
feel me? So
well, I say this: if there's a white officer, and they put him, and I think this kind of morals what you want to hear probably, and they put him in a predominantly black neighborhood, and he's the beat officer, and he has to patrol that beat. Then he has to understand the environment that he's in. There are a lot of white officers out there that in the community people love, because they are super, and they are servants, they are public servants, they are super officers. And then there are some that they'll tell you, we can't say nothing to him, because number one, he resent being there. He don't want to be there anyway. He'd rather be on the narcotics team, but you ain't paid your dues to be there. He want to be on SWAT, but you ain't paid your dues to be there. You got to be a community police officer before you can raise up to the next level. But he feel that he's privileged to be there. So that's the officer you do not want in the African American community, because he's going to violate every person that he come in contact with. And he's going to say that he's doing it by the law, and he's not doing it by the law. And I want you to understand that every supervisor is not there to stand over an officer to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to do by policy and procedure.
why not? You the supervisor.
Well,
You got too many areas.
Well,
you may
that
not
don't-
have no more than 2 to 3
I gotta
supervisors. You got to walk it, but the supervisor, you know, he may be in the office doing paperwork, or he may.
No, but do you guys have to do surveys? Can you has that ever happened
Yeah,
where you
surveys
did
don't work.
surveys in the community where literally they can, you know, because here's the deal. At Fort Walton Beach, I was on their website a couple of weeks ago, and they have a academy for civilians. So they're asking you to sign up to go through the academy as a civilian so that you can see how they're trained.
And that's their way again of trying to get the community involved with law enforcement so you can have an understanding. That's their way again, going back to communication. That's their way of communicating with the public to let them know, hey, we will educate you on what law enforcement officers do. But I want you to understand, there's going to be certain things that you'll be privileged to see.
Let me add to this discussion because the Attorney General, Eric, what's his name, back when Obama.
Eric Holder.
Yes, he did a report on Ferguson.
I
Did y'all
had,
read
I had
the
the privilege
report?
of meeting him
Yeah.
and being his security at one time.
I love Eric. But he did a report that he released. And what they found out for Ferguson is that it was policed by mostly all white police officers and to an all black community. And they terrorized these black people. Almost 80 to 90% of the people in Ferguson had some type of warrant or, you know, some type of fine they
Remember
could
that.
issue. Because what they would do is, and they was lining their pockets with it. They were fining people for anything. And it was like, so what he found out is that when the white officers police the black communities, they terrorize the people in that community.
And like you were saying, Carlos, you were saying about how there are a number of white officers who can be in black communities and they love them. And I think when we take the race away from it, it comes back down to a job of service. If you are truly a servant and that's your purpose, that's what God has given you, and you use it in law enforcement, it doesn't matter what color you are. You're going to be fair and equitable to everybody that you. But because we have such a race issue here in America, it's hard to do that. And so just like Keisha was saying, 80% does not seem at all appalling when we have a race issue, and nobody ever wants to talk about
Well,
it.
let's just say this. We know that there is corruption in everything.
Yes.
I think it was Apostle Paul that said, when I sought to do right, evil was present on every hand. But we have to understand that corruption is always going to be around. And there are people who basically don't respect the capacity in which they serve. And so when you look at race, and the reason why I don't get so involved in race and black and white is because it's not something that is taboo. It's not something that is hidden. It's not. It is something that's staring you dead in your face, and people can't
I don't
see
see
this.
color.
That's
what they say,
You
use a lie.
you can actually see it, and not only can you don't have to physically see race, but you can hear race in words. You can see race in writing. You know, so I don't have to talk about it as much because that was a place in which I was born. You know, and I grew up in that. You know, so I understand how to recognize when a person is racially biased or being racial in a sense. But you know, but when we look at, you know, the law enforcement officers, as you was talking about, Keisha, Ferguson, and you know, corruption is in every department. There is not a department, and if you have someone that says that my department is like that, it's not like that, they lying. Because they have officers in their department and they don't know what this person is thinking. That's why you have officers that are molesting children. That's why you have officers that be involved in drugs. That's why you have officers that takes money on the side. I mean, you can't police your whole police department because they took an oath and you want them to be adults, responsible adults, to adhere to the oath that they have taken to serve and protect the people within the community. So, but corruption is going to be there.
I'm going to add to what you just said, Carlos, because I had this discussion with people about church. You know, they're so keen on how people are on the outside that what you just said, you can't see people's heart. You can't see their heart. So you got people who harbor corruption in their heart, and just because I can't see it don't mean you didn't do it.
Right.
So that's one of the things that we need to be mindful of.
Right.
Hey, somebody could be smart as a police officer, teacher, anybody, nobody's omitted here. Everybody could,
Well, let me-
corruption is anywhere.
Right. Let me share this with something personal. Keisha shared with me about her son.
City Keisha.
If I may.
City Keisha.
City Keisha shared a issue with a son. I call him a nephew. But in the night that he encountered the deputy
Sheriff.
or the deputy that
Yeah.
was there said that he fastly pulled away from a stop sign is the reason why he pulled him over. Really? is that written somewhere in the law book?
Pulled off too quickly
You know,
from the stop sign.
I don't know that. I don't know that code.
Profiling.
I don't know that code. So, what I'm saying is, instead of you profiling or trying to find drugs to make a name for yourself, would bring me to another point. There are a lot of officers that are trying to make names for themselves, but they're doing it the wrong way.
Hero
I have
syndrome.
several Miniterus awards on my wall at home that can light up the wall for doing very, very, commendable things in the line of duty.
Yes.
But I didn't do that by violating a person's right.
There you go.
I got them by being recognized for what I had done. Now, when this young man encountered this officer, he tells him that I pulled you over because you pulled away from the stop sign so fast. Okay. Well, while you were profiling that officer, somebody could have been breaking in somebody's car or house down the street.
Profiling that kid.
Why you not
Right.
patrolling the area?
Right.
If he didn't do anything wrong.
Well, see, he
You
was
know.
coming out of a nice little, at the time he was dating a girl who was not African American, and he was coming from her home, and I think he saw him in his little Honda Accord and decided that, like you said, profiling.
So we have to look at it. So you saying that you've never been there before? You saying that you've never been there before? You never profiled anybody? No. Really? Yes. Why?
Speak now.
Because of
Come
the
on.
fact I've always been taught that you don't have to look for nothing in law enforcement, Keisha. I don't have to look for drugs. It's gonna come to me.
Yes.
I don't have to look for a seatbelt ticket. It's gonna come to me. Everybody don't wear seatbelts. I don't have to look for a person to run a stop. I don't have to sit there and bird dog a stop sign or a red light all day because I know somebody's gonna run that red light. Somebody's gonna run that stop sign. Somebody's gonna get a citation. So therefore, I don't have to be the cop or the deputy that writes 150 to 200 tickets just to get commendable pats on the back. They say, man, he's a great officer. He really enforces the law.
I call that hero syndrome.
Okay, so I'm glad you talked about citations. So let's talk a little bit about, which is a big thing that we want to discuss with you before our time is up, is how to stay safe, how to stay alive when you get stopped by the police. You can speak from the perspective, I would like first from a woman, and then from African Americans, and then just people in general. Like, as in the mind of an officer, what are some of the things that will make you feel uncomfortable to where it would cause a situation where I wouldn't be safe?
I'm gonna throw in before you come in with your answer, and this is what I've been telling everybody. With a bad cop, there's nothing you can do. If he want to take your life, he can take your life. If he's a bad cop and he does not want you to walk away, it's up to him.
And I really have to agree with what she says. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a cop. That can be any individual that's walking down the street. But when we're talking about law enforcement officers who took an oath to protect and serve, when your baby walk out of the house, get into his car, he's driving down the street, he's going to his respective place that you told him that he can go, and he's coming back home at a decent time, he commits a traffic infraction, whether he run through a red light or he didn't see the stop sign or whatever, which is common.
Yes.
You don't write, everything is not a writable offense. Because once those blue lights come on, people are already afraid anyway. You know? So, but if you are pulled over, and this is for you listeners, I just want you to be educated in what to do when you are pulled over. As a woman, let's start with a woman, as Keisha said. When you're pulled over, And let's give you this scenario that you're pulled over at night, and it's night, and you're trying to get home, and you committed a traffic infraction. I need for you to slow down to a speed of, say, 20, or just a very moderate speed where you're not speeding, or it seems as if you're trying to elude the police. Go to a lighted area. But while you're going to that lighted area, I need for you to get on your cell phone, and you have the right to call the dispatcher yourself. Call 911. Call and say, hey, one of your officers or one of your deputies, they're pulling me over. They're attempting to pull me over. I have broken down to, and give them the speed that you're at. And I'm letting you know that, and give them the location where you are. And let them know that you're going to this location here because there's light, and you just don't trust being on the side of the road at night with a law enforcement officer, because you don't know. There are persons out there that are imposters, that are acting as if they're a police officer, and they are not police officers, and they're killing and raping women on the side of the road. You want to make sure that you're safe. So therefore, when you get there, this officer, once he get out of the car, because dispatch has already spoken with him to let him know this person that you're attempting to pull over is on the phone with me at this time. She says she's going to pull over at the next Chevron gas station. Then that officer know that you're a female in the car. That should de-escalate some of his adrenaline then. So when he approaches your car, okay, make sure that you let him know if you have a weapon in the car, because let's say, I'm trying to get everything in a nutshell because of time. You may have a concealed carry weapon permit. And because you have a concealed carry, it's supposed to be in your glove compartment or whatever, you put it inside, it's inside your glove compartment. Let the officer know, hey, sir, I do have a weapon inside of my glove compartment, but my registration is in my glove compartment. That is out of respect, letting this officer know that you have a weapon in your car and there are no surprises, okay? So once you do that, then you're able to give this officer what they need. Well, say for instance, for another scenario, you are stopped in a dark place. Well, turn on all your dome lights. Turn your dome lights on in your vehicle. Roll down all your windows. For the officer, when he's approaching your vehicle, he's able to see inside of the vehicle what you're doing. Place your hands on the steering wheel. Place both of your hands on the steering wheel for the officer, when he gets there, can see where your hands are. For no officer won't have to lie and say that you was fidgeting around in the car, or I thought he or she had a weapon, or some of that nature. Place your hands where they can see them, and the windows are down and the lights are on, ready to give them the information that they desire. If your son is pulled over, we need to talk with our young boys, our African American males. I understand that they're seeing a lot of shootings with law enforcement officers in the communities and on television. But they are afraid, and I understand that you are afraid. But I need you to understand that you are men. You are somebody's child. And I want you to understand that there are some persons out there that may not care that you belong to somebody, that they just want to get a job done or make a name for themselves. But I want you to understand that you need to respect the law at all times. It doesn't matter if this officer comes up to your car, he can be rapping and raving, already raising his voice at you. You need to be the professional person. Still, I know you don't get your feelings involved in the traffic stop. If he's going to give you a citation, let him give you the citation. If you don't give consent to search to your vehicle, you just don't give consent to search to your vehicle. But whatever he asks you for, give it to him. Don't escalate something or cause yourself to be shot or killed. The fact of the matter is, when you're pulled over, you want to be able to leave the traffic stop unharmed. You want to leave the traffic stop without bullet holes in you, or billy club going up beside your head, or you being snatched out of your window, or anything. Don't talk back to the police officer. Talk to them in a very moderate voice with respect. Even though, again, if they're being very disorderly with you, they have body cameras on and they're being recorded. You have the right at that time to say, hey, at the end of this traffic stop, I'm going to be speaking with your superior officers. And so you have that right. So the young girls, when you're pulled over,
Don't tell them what
you
you
know,
do, they might.
Don't mouth off at the law enforcement officers. I know we got, Shaquan and all of them, if you get mad because they done pulled you over.
Well, and here's the only thing. I've been rolling with you tough, bro. You know I love you, and I've been rolling with everything you're saying, and I'm learning some good stuff, and I'm hoping our listeners learn some good stuff. But respect goes two ways, okay? And I just feel as though it becomes one of those situations of authority where you feel like you can just say whatever to me and I can't say anything about it. Then I can go to your arrest officer and file a complaint. But you know that how far that go. That paper go as far as I wrote it, okay? And I just need to, and I think even like for African American males, I felt my son came in the house and he was so broke down. So
Spirit.
broke down the way this man had talked to him. And I just feel like at some point I know right then there was nothing I can do and I can't erase that experience for him. But why did he have to have that experience? He was very cooperative with this police officer. They played the video. I've seen the video. He didn't do anything disrespectful to him. And a police officer still acted in such a vagrant manner. And that's my, like, I'm so upset with the fact that every time they tell you how to behave with a law enforcement officer who ain't behaving with you.
Well, you have.
And that is not against the law for me to be upset. Because, listen, if I feel like I've not done anything wrong, I don't know what your intentions are as a police officer just because you pulled me over. I don't know you from a can of paint. So I get just as nervous, I get just as fearful, and I'm just as aggravated. And you're not giving me any respect.
Well, let
Again,
me
let me say this before I
Go
lose this
ahead.
thought. Again, and I understand that, but we need training on both sides.
Whew.
We need training on the law enforcement side, and we need training on the individual side, the pedestrian side. We need training on both sides, and you are right. Respect goes both ways. But I tell you, the best tool that would ever given to law enforcement is not the firearm on the side. It's not the billy club. It's not the flashlight. It was those body cameras that they're wearing today. That's the best tool that ever been given to law enforcement officers. And you got to understand that if an officer violates you in any type of way, that camera should pick it up. And if you report to their superior officers, hey, roll his video camera back. And if he tell you his video camera was not rolling at that time, that should be automatic termination right there. Automatic termination right
Yes.
there. Because at all times, anytime you encounter a civilian or a citizen, your camera should be rolling. Okay?
And it's protect you and them.
I do agree that yes, yours broken, but I want to tell you one thing that your son has. He has a life experience.
Yes.
He has a life of experience, and another thing that he has.
But I don't
Wait a
like
minute.
that because
Wait a
guess
minute.
what? There's a lot of people who are
Yeah.
his counterparts that don't have that.
All right, yeah, and that's true. And another thing he has,
I'm about to
he
say.
still has his life.
Well, and let me say this, but his life wasn't because he was respectful. See, this is why I said that before I went on and did a disclaimer, because a person that want to take your life can. But I want to add the fact that we tell our young black boys that being respectful save them. And it's not the case for a bad cop. It's just not the case. But the other part is when the white kids are disrespectful. And have y'all watched Cops?
Yes.
I had never, I would say this, it's crazy, but I had never encountered, for black people, we've always been taught, cop, you like this, you're straight ahead, you're doing whatever he says. I looked at Cops one day and I saw this white man cussing the cop out, throwing a fit, and the police officer stood there and say nothing. And I was thinking, if this was a black man, they would have
he wasn't breaking the law.
No, but that's what I'm saying. But for a black man to be cussing, unarmed, and showing his butt, disrespectful, it's like, I need to pull my gun. I need to Glock it.
No,
Now
under
they
the law.
Now they dangerous.
Right, under the law. You see, this is what I want to try to get you guys to understand.
Okay.
Under the law, that you can go to jail for that, for cursing in the public, for disorderly conduct. I mean, you got to understand
Can
that.
a cop go to jail for that?
You can make a
Who gonna
citizen
arrest
arrest. You can make.
a cop get convicted of doing the same thing that y'all saying we can get convicted of.
Well, he would probably get
See,
reprimanded.
that's what I'm
No,
saying.
well,
I'm going to jail and somebody gonna talk to
me,
you. What we doing?
Well, the other
If it's
part,
wrong, it's wrong, Carlos.
well, the other part is,
And it's absolutely right. If it is wrong, it is wrong. But I need you to understand
Help me.
that listen,
Okay.
this is LAW. It's law. This is not us.
what is that? Oh my God.
Thi-
So
thi-
you saying
this
the
is
law
not us.
says that police officers can cuss in public and maybe get reprimanded, but citizens can do that and get arrested.
I did not say that. No, I'm not saying that. No, I did not say that. All officers are held to a higher standard.
And
But
to the
I'm
law.
saying if it is caught that he has talked, that's why I said again, the best tool is that body camera. Okay? If he's caught cursing, he can lose his job. It's dependent upon what his superior officers want to do with him.
Well, I'm gonna give you a scenario.
But then if, do you see what I'm saying
He got
here?
it. He got it.
Man, but if you want the truth, Keisha, I need you to understand. Keisha,
City
wait a minute.
Keisha.
City Keisha. City Keisha. City
Keisha.
Keisha. City Keisha and Country Keisha.
Oh,
I want you all to understand that this is nothing new that we're talking about tonight
We
about
know it.
racism, about police brutality. I mean, I come from Selma, Alabama. That's 1965. They were beating people to bloody.
In 2018.
About a bridge that's over rights. The Alabama State Troopers.
Yes.
My little brother was an Alabama State Trooper. He's still in law enforcement today. And I'm saying the same entity that they had no African Americans serving in. He later became an African American trooper. So I'm telling you, racism has always been around, and the way that you encounter a person, we have to always understand that no matter how belligerent or disorderly you are with me, I have a freedom of speech. Yes, you do, but I'm going to be professional about mine.
And I'm not saying that they should talk to anybody like that. I agree with you. But what I am saying is the consequences are definitely different. And I feel like if you're going to demand that from me, then give it. One statistic says that the likelihood of an African American male going to jail is 1 in 3.
Yeah.
And the likelihood of a Caucasian male going to jail is 1 in 17.
And they be showing they tail. But I'm gonna tell you a scenario, Carlos, that happened to me and Keisha. City Keisha, we were going to your wife's Women's Day. Remember that?
We did.
Yeah, and so Keisha was riding her Sadie's, y'all. She wouldn't even, she was so bougie.
No,
in that
Keisha was
Sadie's.
talking to me.
No,
And you know
she's
how
so
you get
bougie
to
in that
talking.
Mercedes.
You know how you talking and you ain't
Look,
paying attention.
She flooring it in
I need to not be
Crestview.
talking about what type of
Yeah,
car I
okay,
drive.
she was no,
Nah,
she was so bougie. Anyway, we talking, and whoop, the lights come on, and she goes, "Oh my God, I'm about to get another ticket." And I said, "What did I tell you? I
I don't
don't
know.
get tickets.
Oh.
I don't get tickets. I
wow.
don't. I haven't gotten a ticket. I've gotten pulled over about 30
Well, the guy
times.
had been following me for about 8
And
miles.
we were still talking. We were talking. We didn't even know what
trying,
was up.
trying to catch up to
But-
me.
So he pulled over and I said, Keisha, follow
I
my
forgot
lead.
about that.
But I told you, I said, follow my lead. And you was like, what? I was like, follow my
we
lead.
were coming to your ordination.
Yeah, that's where we were going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, so we get pulled over. I have this stick that I do for every cop. I call it my blonde girl.
Oh, okay.
And this is what I say, and I get pulled over, and it works. Hey,
Lord.
I'm giving y'all knowledge, catching people.
Lord.
I go, oh my gosh, what did I do? First thing they say, ma'am, you were speeding. And this is what I say, no, true story. If I'm in Florida, I say, I'm from Alabama. I don't even understand these Florida laws. And they go, ma'am, ma'am.
I should arrest her right now, just for how she looks
I
and the way
have
she
not
sounds.
gotten a ticket since
Off of GP, huh?
2000.
Yeah.
I have not gotten a ticket since 2000, but I've been
Don't
pulled
go
over.
jinxing yourself.
I know, but hey, I
knock
got
on
the
wood.
stitch. I gave it away. But the other thing is, in 2000, the last time I got pulled over in Crenshaw County in Alabama. It's a rural county. I don't trust these cops, and I don't trust, and that's once that you grew up in rural Alabama, you have a distinct not trusting white cops anyways. So he pulled me over where he cut the lights on. I didn't pull over till I got to McDonald's parking lot. And he comes up to the one, he's like, why didn't you pull over back there? And I told him, well, I'm a single woman by myself. I don't feel safe. And I'd rather pull over in a well-lit area. And this cop told me, he said, I didn't even think about that. And I was like, yeah, but I did.
But, and that's good though,
I
because just
did.
what Carlos said,
Yes.
he would have already been informed of that, because he could have just reached in there and grabbed you out thinking you was trying to get away from him, but had you called. So I like the information he gave us about calling that same dispatch.
Oh, I
and
ain't
letting them
never
know.
called dispatch, but
I'm just saying,
but
just
you know
doing
what
that
I
would be
did
good.
too. But that's the thing. But I'm saying that to say that the cop didn't even think about the fact that I was a single woman by myself in the car. And like you just said, everybody's not a cop. We're in a rural area. When they put, there are no witnesses to where it's going to be your word against his.
Absolutely.
So that's why I told him, I was like, I'm by myself. I don't want to pull over. I don't feel safe.
Right.
And some cops assume that you should be safe because it's them. No, I don't know you. I don't care what kind of badge you got.
So when I approach a vehicle, let me tell you, when I approach a vehicle, I say who I am. I let them know which agency I'm working for. and I would say something along these lines. I'd say, hello, sir and ma'am, Mr. Such and such of such and such department. I see your license and registration. I'll tell you the reason why I pulled you over. If they ask me, well, why did you pull me over with me going through my little spiel? And then I'll commence to tell them, because at that time, it's about communication. I've already pulled them over, and I need to let them know that I'm willing to talk with them about the infraction or whatever it is that I've stopped them for. I've heard officers tell people, just give me what I asked you for, and I'll tell you in a minute. You know,
Yeah.
but I need you to understand that at this time, we're communicating, we're talking. And as we establish that rapport, I want you to understand that we are able to establish some trust between each other, whereas you feel very, very comfortable with me to give me what I need and what I asked you for. And if there are law enforcement officers out there that's getting into law enforcement officers just to be bad boys, okay, the Martin Lawrence and the Will Smiths, you are sadly mistaken about what this job entails. You need to understand that we are public servants, and we were not hired to go out there and be vigilante. I was looking at the disturbing shooting of the young man in Chicago. Yeah. You know, this young man is about to scale a fence with both hands, and this officer shoots this boy in the back. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I've been on several foot pursuits, and I've been on foot pursuits where people have thrown guns and thrown knives, and I ain't killing, you know. But
listen what you just said.
But I'm trying to
Scaling the
understand
fence. That means both hands
on the
are
fence.
on the fence.
They were not a threat.
And they didn't have a gun, and they had to be shot in the back. Are you saying in the back?
Okay, so before we go, it was another situation just recently in Chicago where a guy had a concealed weapon. Even though he had a license to carry the weapon, he did not have a conceal. So when the police stopped him, they grabbed him and you know, they were putting their hands on him to take him, and he flung open, and you could see the gun and ammunition.
Yeah.
And then when he went out in the streets, it looked like he was grabbing for it.
That's what I was scared.
So would you have responded the same way in that situation?
Well, in that situation, because I have been in that situation before. I mean, they were like, oh, he's been in a lot of stuff. Yes, I have.
Yes.
And when you come from an area where I come from, I would like to take some of these officers back to where I police that. I would like to take them back and put them on a 12-hour shift with me, especially on a club night. And I would like to see them still be a police officer on Monday morning. I've seen several officers walk away.
Take them to Pritchard,
You
Alabama.
know, oh yeah, the Pritchard or something like that. But I'm like this. This is what I would have done in that situation, because you know I've been in that situation before where you know you're trying to detain a person or get a person into handcuffs or something, and they swing around and you see a weapon on them. At that time, you know, you can order that person, hey, you know, drop that weapon or whatever you have in your hand, you need to drop that weapon. What happened to the communication? It seemed like from there, it went from we had our hands on him for a second to bam, he was shot. So I'm like, okay, the guy was spinning back. That means the gun was still holstered.
It was.
So you mean to tell me that he can draw that quick? He's fast. If both of you standing there, he can draw that quick and shoot you. So you mean to tell me that we can't rush him and wrestle him to the ground if we have to have a firearm then? So we're not trying, because I saw another shooting in I think it's.
Hey, pick another city.
No, Chicago.
I need you to pick another city.
Yeah.
Chicago.
No.
Pick another city.
I think it was in Slidell or Louisiana.
Okay, there we go.
Where that young man was outside the store.
Yes.
And they wrestled that young man to the ground, and the gun was in his pocket. It's 2 or 3 of you guys on this young man. Ain't nobody holding his hand going for handcuffs. But y'all police officers lifting weights and running and training, and 3 of y'all can't handle this one man.
Well,
But you had time to grab your gun while you're on top of him,
Right.
and shoot him.
Instead of grabbing his hands and hands.
Instead of grabbing his hand and holding him. Case in point, I was in a fight in the middle of Highway 80 at a club. A young man who was highly intoxicated and on narcotics.
dangerous.
And my bag up was about 20 minutes away from me. And I fought that boy in the middle of the street along with all his friends. But his friends left me alone, tore my badge off me, tore my uniform off me. And the only way I was able to hold this boy was in a headlock on the ground. Cars passing by me on the middle of the street. My firearm was still on my side. He was still punching me and biting me. Did I shoot him?
No. Let me ask you this question, Carlos, and I know we're
So I
in.
don't, I'm
Let-
trying to see.
I want to ask you this question because I don't get this. Going back to Harris Augustus, the guy who had the gun in Chicago, and we saw it, and Stephon Clark and all these other people. My question is, how are white mass shooters able to be obtained without getting shot by police
I'm
officers?
talking about they done took
They
down
didn't kill people.
a bunch of them. You hear
And
me?
I mean, I said mass shooting.
Right.
Did I
Walk
say
away
mass
Yeah,
shooting?
you did. Walk away unscathed.
And killing people, and police able to bring
let
them.
me
I
say
just
this.
gotta ask a police officer.
Not all
Clearly,
of
we
them.
know they had a gun.
Right.
No.
Well, listen, not all, not
no,
all.
not all, but let's say this. The ones who have taken their own life, that's
Right.
one count, but it's rarely that the police officer took him down.
Because if you can be very
And
honest,
he's armed.
the ones who they've taken down, we talk about just in the past year, compared to the black boys they done beat to crap or done killed. Come on now.
Tell
Well,
us.
not all of them, but I understand, not all. But however, if a person says that they're giving up, or I surrender, and then they surrender and they take them into custody. But another thing I want to shed light on, because I don't want people to think that you're a police officer and you're biased toward police officers or something like that. I'm not. I
Black man
want you to
first.
understand that I'm still a public servant. And people don't understand what you're looking at the time when this altercation or this encounter with this person is going on. You know, if they tell you not to reach for anything, your hands in the air, and you need to do just that. But now, it ain't tell you reach from a cell phone, because I'm telling you, the guy on the other end of that gun, he probably have tunnel vision. And all thing he is seeing is you going down in your pocket to relinquish whatever it is, whether it's a cell phone, let them know what you got, or I ain't got nothing on me, it's just my cell phone, pop, pop, pop. There you are. The person's behind we have officers out there with very high power rifles in these cars, and we have to have these weapons, y'all. We have to have these weapons. Let me tell you something, both of you. When a person says that they're not racist, then they're lying. Whether they're black or white, because we're all prejudiced towards something.
I know, but black people can't be racist.
Black people can't be racist.
They can. But I
we can be,
understand.
we can be
Okay.
prejudiced, but we can't be
We can't
racist.
be racist. We don't have enough money to be racist. But
No, we don't have the power.
we can be
We don't.
prejudiced.
We don't.
Well, then stop acting like it. Then. Well, then stop acting.
I can be prejudiced.
You know,
Don't-
you call between cookies.
No, I ain't. No. Well, then stop
I
acting
can't
like.
believe we agree.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Y'all, I actually got these two to agree on something. My truthful comment of what I was saying is that we all are prejudiced towards something, whether it's food or whether it's clothing or whatever it is that they all holler about. We running around here with signs saying Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. That is true. Black lives matter, but white lives matter. Jewish lives matter. Mexican lives matter. Everybody lives matter. But what we want to understand about from this law enforcement perspective is that, are you going to protect my life? And that's what we want at the end of the day, knowing that that person is not going to be looking at me because I'm black, or not going to be looking at that person because they're white, but they're going to be looking at them in that sense of saying this person is equal, and I'm going to treat them with the equal respect.
All right, guys. So now we've gotten down to it. We've had Officer Carlos. We ain't wore you out too bad. We appreciate it. Now, this is what we do want. We know that this is probably going to bring forth some questions, and we would love to have him back. He'll be our resident police officer, and so he'll come back periodically when things are, we have things to address. And so if you have any questions after hearing this episode, please DM us on Instagram, leave us a message on Facebook, whatever you like, and we would definitely get those questions to him, and then he can come back on and answer it.
From the outhouse
To the penthouse. We out.